What's up everyone and welcome to the first Teckoh video of 2023. So as you probably know, duos are officially the primary competitive game mode in Chapter 4 Season 1, with all the placement and elite cups being duos, the zero build cups being duos, and presumably others in the future being duos as well. A lot of you may be in a position where you have a duo you enjoy playing with, but you're struggling to practice and improve as a team. So with that in mind, in today's video I'll be covering the best methods you can use to improve with your duo in Fortnite Chapter 4. Before we get into it, if you find this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, and consider subscribing as well if you're new to the channel and you want to see more content just like this in the future. And lastly, if you want to show some extra support, it would really mean a lot if you could use code Teckoh in the item shop, as it's 100% free and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a massive thank you to everyone who uses my code. You guys are awesome. But with that said, and without further ado, let's get into today's video. So this video is going to be split up into 3 different sections. These are going to include fighting, which is exactly what you'd expect. The next section is tournaments, which encompasses how to practice specifically for like higher level tournament matches and end games. And then game sense, which encompasses your overall decision making. I'll put up a timestamp to each section on screen right now if you want to skip around, but I do recommend you watch the whole thing through, that way you know all the most effective practice methods. Getting into our first practice method for fighting as a duo though, and this one is going to be a simple yet effective method, which is grinding arena. Grinding arena is one of the most effective ways to improve fighting as a duo, since it is quite literally the most realistic fighting practice. It involves all the mechanics, coordination, communication, and general strategy of any other fight, and there's really not much reason to avoid playing arena with your duo. So overall, to improve at fighting as a duo, simply hopping into arena is definitely a tough method to beat. The next method I want to go over when it comes to fighting as a duo is going to be creative 2v2s. Creative 2v2s are basically just realistic fights against specific opponents within creative. Compared to arena, 2v2s have a few pros and cons. On the negative side, they're slightly less realistic with the lack of third parties, but the positive side is that they do allow you to choose your own opponents, so you can play against more or less skilled players, and you get more overall fighting practice since you don't have the downtime of looting and rotating like you do in a regular arena match. So in that sense, 2v2s are technically more efficient, but arena does give a much more well-rounded experience. Regardless, 2v2s are another fantastic method to improve at fighting as a duo, and I'll go ahead and put up a code to one of my favorite realistic 2v2 maps, which is Finest Realistic 2v2 map. Alongside realistic 2v2s, you also do have other options like Zone War 2v2s, Box Fight 2v2s, and others, but I do find realistics to be the best for most players simply because they replicate a real fight so closely. But you can feel free to try the other methods out as well. On to our third and final practice method for fighting though, and this one is sort of going to tie into the tournament endgame type of practice, but I did feel like it's slightly more in the fighting category than anything, and this one is going to be Duo Zone Wars. Duo Zone Wars is basically a simulated scrim endgame in Fortnite, except in creative. Just like the realistic 2v2s, these allow you to get a ton of fights and good practice in without the drag of having to play the entire game to actually get to endgame. So it's highly efficient, allows you to get into a lot of fights, and helps you work on your chemistry, communication, and general fighting skills as a duo. Keep in mind that this is separate from 2v2 Zone Wars. 2v2 Zone Wars, the ones we talked about before, are just you and your duo against one other team, whereas Duo Zone Wars are usually 32 total players, and it's basically just like a regular match with each duo fending for themselves. So it's a 2v2 compared to a free-for-all. But with that in mind, this is a fantastic practice method, and I definitely recommend you give it a shot. So I'll go ahead and put the code up to a popular Duo Zone War map right now. Getting into our next section for today's video, and this one is tournaments. This section is basically meant to encompass the most effective practice methods that can help you improve and place higher in tournaments specifically. Even if you and your duo don't play competitive, these methods still can help, but they are primarily meant for people who have the goal of competing and placing in tournaments. Starting off this section, the first practice method that works insanely well here is scrims and ladders. Scrims and ladders are basically simulations of tournament matches outside of Fortnite sanctioned tournaments. Usually you can find scrims in pretty much any major public scrim server within Fortnite, like any of the open scrims or G2 servers. Scrims usually allow you to fight people at your drop spot and then require you to chill out and avoid fighting until a certain zone or until Storm Surge starts, and that basically allows you to get a stacked endgame like you'd find in a tournament. The only major problem I see with scrims is that they can be really hard to find in certain regions, and you do run into griefers occasionally who just fight for the sake of fighting and they don't care if they get banned from the server. It is a bannable offense, but a lot of these servers are just so big that it takes them forever to find out if somebody's cheating or not. And the big issue is the zone rule, since it basically sacrifices the mid game for a stacked end game, despite mid game rotations being very important. So scrims definitely have their place in terms of off spawn fighting and end game, but as an alternative, ladders are an incredible option. Ladders are literally just tournaments hosted in scrim servers directly. Instead of cash prizes, usually they just allow you to rank up within the scrim server. For example, in East Open, they have multiple ranks like Open, Challengers, and Gold, and you basically rank up through these by playing the ladders they host and placing high in them. And if you place really high in the Gold ladder, you can gain access to the practice server, also known as Prac, which is basically the scrim server that all the pros play in. Ladders are basically tournament matches outside of tournaments, and it's a great idea to play them with your duo whenever you see them running, because they're some of the most effective, best practice you can get without any restrictions. Moving on from that, the second practice method I have for tournaments is going to be a pretty obvious one, which is literally just to play tournaments. I know it's a ridiculously simple one, but this is something so many players skip out on when they want to play competitive. They want to play tournaments and improve, but for some reason they think that playing a tournament and placing poorly is just worse than not playing it at all, so they simply don't play play. In competitive Fortnite, you need to gain experience to place well, and the fact of the matter is that you're likely to place poorly your first few tournaments regardless. But if you're trying to get better at tournaments and know how to play them, there's no better way to do that than to literally just play tournaments. It may be intimidating, but you'll quickly find yourself learning and picking up new skills that you wouldn't otherwise have. So if you have a goal of placing higher in tournaments, definitely make sure that you're actually gaining that experience. Moving on to our final section of today's video though, and this section is going to pertain to how you and your duo can work on game sense and improve your strategy and general knowledge as a team. This part is fairly straightforward, but if you're trying to become a high level team, this section is going to be incredibly important. The first aspect of improving your game sense as a duo is the most obvious, which is to VOD review. VOD reviewing as a duo is very simple. Just play out the games as you usually would. These can be games from arena, scrims, tournaments, or whatever else. From there, hop into a Discord call together, and one of you should have the replay open. From there, just watch through all of your rotations and fights from both perspectives. Spend time looking to see what you did right and wrong, and take notes on what you did well and what you can do better next time. When you're in the game and doing your thing, you're often going to miss a lot of those key details of what goes on, which is why VOD reviewing in the future is so valuable. It allows you to look back at your own gameplay from a non-biased perspective and see what really happened. You can see exactly what you did right as well as the things you did wrong that may have led to your death, and then you can actually use that information to plan out how you should change your gameplay and what you should focus on in your practice. VOD reviewing is a very powerful practice method, and just an FYI, I do plan on uploading a video about how to VOD review properly a few days after this one. So if you're interested in that, be sure to hit that subscribe button with the post notifications on, that way you don't miss out. And maybe it's already up when you're seeing this. I plan to post it like 1 or 2 days afterwards, so it may be worth taking a look to see if that's the case. That is, if you'd like to get a bit more specific information about how to VOD review. Moving on to our next duo game sense tip, and actually the final tip for this video, and this one is to learn from pro duos. The fact of the matter is that watching your own gameplay is very helpful, but it might not be enough to entirely step up your gameplay. You can find what goes right and wrong in your own gameplay, but you're not actually learning any new strategies or tricks. And that's where the concept of watching pros comes into play. By watching pro duos and learning from their gameplay, whether you do it individually or as a duo, you're able to kind of pick up on what they do. You can see how they approach fights as a team, how they choose to rotate in various situations, how they communicate, and all sorts of things of that nature. And this can sort of expand your horizons when it comes to the strategies and techniques used as a team. Watching back your own gameplay is definitely critical as it gives you more insight into your own games, but watching pro players is also a fantastic method because it actually exposes you to new strategies and ideas, and you really just won't find those things in your own gameplay, otherwise they just wouldn't be new because you're already doing them. And overall, combining these two methods is an incredibly powerful way to improve your game sense as a duo and perform way better in game as a result. Well, with all that said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to practice and improve as a duo in Fortnite Chapter 4. Overall, by using all the methods I've gone over to improve your fighting, tournament gameplay, and game sense as a duo, you should find yourself and your duo not only improving individually, but as a unit as well. Improving as a duo is actually pretty easy when you break it down into these methods, and whether your goal is to make money in tournaments, gain tons of arena points, or even just improve with your friends, hopefully this video gave you a very clear outline as to how you can do that. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, and consider subscribing as well if you're new to the channel and you want to see more content just like this in the future. And of course, it would really mean a lot if you could use code Teckoh in your item shop. It's 100% free for you. It only takes a few seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, I want to give a massive thank you to everyone who uses my code. You guys are awesome, and your support seriously means a lot. But with that said, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.